Can AI speed up the evolution of banks? Welcome to FLAIRS, the podcast. Conversations with the sponsors of the 2023 edition of FLAIRS. We're not looking for sales pitches, but for true insights and some good stories. 10 to 15 minutes of healthy food for thought. Who could say no to that? I'm Rogier van der Zwaan. I work for ING, and my guest in this episode is Alex Kwiatkowski, or Alex K. He is a global director financial services at SAS, and on LinkedIn he writes about himself. I analyze the evolution of financial services across the globe and identify where advanced analytics and artificial intelligence can deliver the biggest benefits. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, GSOH. So, welcome to the show, Alex. Just one question about what you write on LinkedIn. GSOH? Help me out.
Of course. Good sense of humour. Which they tell me is very helpful both personally and professionally. And I would say particularly you need to have a good sense of humour sometimes to be connected with the banking industry. Not because it's a laugh a minute, but because sometimes you need to be able to see some of the humour and some of the absurdity that we can sometimes experience.
I couldn't agree more. It's an interesting world. And I had a bit of a heavy title. I'm talking about the evolution of banks. So where are we in our evolution as banks? Are we on the brink of extinction, or are we still alive and kicking?
It's a Friday that we're recording this, and so I'm feeling optimistic because we're going into the weekend. I think my views can sometimes change, not with the wind, but sometimes I can see a more pessimistic future for banking. Sometimes I see a more optimistic one. Right now, I don't think we're on the brink of extinction, which I guess is good. I think we are, however, at maybe the crossroads or the fork in the road where banking has to choose what it wants to be.
Yeah. And what are the options then? Like if we're on a crossroads, what's left and what's right?
What's left and what's right? Quite a lazy answer that I've got for you. One is that do banks want to become the technology companies that they perhaps aspire to be, or maybe that they're told they have to be? No, you're not going to be a bank anymore. You're going to be a tech company that happens to do banking. I can hear the sound of traditional bankers everywhere collapsing under no, we don't want to be a tech company. We just want to be a bank because that's what we've been for hundreds of years. They have that choice. What sort of company do they want to be? More broadly, and this is where I kind of get quite excited about this, which is what do you want to be? Do you want to be an agent for change in society? Do you want to be at the forefront of things like ESG? Do you want to be playing a pivotal role in addressing climate-related activities and trying to maybe stem the tide of climate change? Where do you want to be in the hearts and minds of your customers? Do you want to socially align your values to the social values of your customers? You've got a lot of choices to make. So probably it's maybe not just one fork in the road where it's a binary choice, left or right. Maybe it's more like a maze, and you've actually got to figure out how you're going to find your way to success. And I would always say that the heart of that is going to be the use of data and analytics, but it's not just about data and analytics, but it's data and analytics across a broad span of other activities.
And if you look at the outside of banks, it can be quite flashy. We introduced digital or mobile banking. Almost everybody uses that now. We're digital front runners, would like to say that about ourselves at ING. The inside sometimes looks different. So what do you see?
I see the beautiful, shiny sort of front end, a bit beneath above the surface, like the iceberg. So I think what we've got behind the scenes are the usual three challenges that banking needs to solve, which is if you're in a more digitalized world, artificial intelligence at the forefront, how do you implement, how do you bring the benefits from that when perhaps in the back end, things are a little more analog? Yes, we've been digitalizing for what, 20 years or so, but it doesn't mean there is digital everywhere in banking. So you've got some technological challenges. I think you've probably got some process challenges. I spent just 2 years of that 20 actually working directly for a bank. I'll confess to you and the audience, I didn't like working in banking.
No, why not?
No, I found it very restrictive. Everything that I thought that it would be, it wasn't, which was disappointing, particularly on day one, because it's technology challenges, there are some process challenges, and there are some of those cultural challenges as well. No, we don't want to do this. No, we're not doing this. No, 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 no. Until you watch maybe a neobank, a challenger come into the market, and they can do some of those things that maybe traditional banks should have been doing quite some time ago. And it's back to remembering what banking is for.
But it's also the kind of business we're in, right? So the risk is what we do, and avoid risk. So we shouldn't be the front runners in applying new kinds of technologies and stuff like that. Or do you agree with that?
It's an interesting kind of dilemma, which is, do you want to be the leader? Do you want to be a fast follower? Are you happy to almost be a laggard and wait for everybody else to figure it out? And then you can go, right, everyone's worked out what it is that the blueprint should look like. Now we can go and follow that same schema and implement whatever it might be, mobile banking, chatbots, the use of generative AI, whatever it might be. And it's back to that, what the banks want to be, but also that's a very insular view. That's looking from the inside. Hey, what do we want to be? There's another group of influencers in this, and that's us as customers, which is, what do we want our bank to be? Do we want it to be purely digital, or do we still want to have the ability to go and have a face-to-face, in-person conversation with somebody within either a traditional branch or maybe an evolved branch, maybe even a mobile branch? How do we as customers want to interact with our preferred financial providers? So sometimes I can be a little bit harsh on banking, that it's not done enough so far. I also reckon that classically, big banks take a while to implement, to transform, to change. Back to those three areas: the technology, the people, call it culture, and process. Those things don't just get changed at the snap of my fingers because I want them to. The difference now perhaps is that whereas banks maybe had a choice, we don't have to do this. Now they see other industries similarly embracing digital, and that if banking looks fundamentally different to, let's say, retail, FMC, fast-moving consumer goods, but other areas where you can see as a consumer or as a business that it's a far more digitalized process, banking will look old-fashioned and out of step if it doesn't start to embrace some of the newer techniques and capabilities.
Where are banks now in the adoption of artificial intelligence?
I guess the good news, at least for SAS, who I work for, and for those of us that look at technology as a force for good, is that banks are not kind of putting their fingers in their ears or their hands over their eyes and pretending this isn't happening. So banks, I think, have been cautious in their approach. It's not been like hey, let's dive in, without really knowing how deep the water is and maybe how fast the current is flowing. So I see banks wanting to use more AI because they see the benefits that it can bring. Benefits to them, improved efficiency, speed, accuracy. But if they can have those benefits, but also share those benefits to the external audience, to their customers, to you and I, but also to their shareholders, if it's going to deliver shareholder value, if it's going to deliver benefits to employees, for example, working fraud and financial crime activity. If AI can genuinely separate the truly suspicious activities from the false positives, where someone's got to work an inquiry and actually realizes that, we shouldn't have stopped that payment transaction. It was perfectly legitimate. We've upset our customer, and we've also wasted time on something which was actually a perfectly legitimate transaction. So I think banks are moving with accelerating speed into the AI world, but I guess you would say like a Disney movie. You know, the genie is out of the bottle, like Aladdin, and I don't think it's a naughty genie. I think it's using technology for for beneficial purposes.
Maybe a little bit naughty. How do we? We're talking about bias. It's one of the big topics when we talk about the data that go into systems like this. At some point, we might have AI take decisions on granting a loan or not, stuff like that. How do we make sure it will be as unbiased as possible?
I think this is where all eyes are right now, because there have been examples, and we would all know them, so I'm not going to repeat them here in detail, where AI has got it wrong, or the analytical modeling has determined that you could have very different credit limits set by inside of the people in the same household with comparable incomes, but the model says you may have a credit limit of X and you may have a credit limit of Y, and it seems to be on maybe gender bias grounds. I think we know what the areas of potential sensitivities would be: gender bias, ethnicity, postal code, many other kind of things in somebody's background. You know, are they a natural born citizen of the country that they are inhabiting, or have they come there in more recent times? How can we make sure that people are treated with fairness? How can we make sure there is accountability? How do we make sure there is transparency? How do we make sure there is explainability? That lovely acronym, FATE. What I think we've got is this, and maybe this has always been the way in anything that's to do with technology and humans, is that as long as there is this ability to, for the human to interact, to have some degree of oversight, you don't just trust it to the model, to the machine. I think we can be confident that bias will be front of mind and therefore can be monitored to make sure that those models do not suddenly, maybe they start out good, but over time, inherent bias can creep in. That's just about how you manage models, how you manage data, how you make sure that there is always going to be integrity in the decisions that that you are making based on the data that you're gathering from a variety of different sources, sometimes in real time. So is it something to be cognizant of? Absolutely. Is it something to be fearful of, which is we can't do this because we know we're going to get it wrong? No, I think we need to have that, I would say, quiet confidence. It's more like a reality, which is as long as we're carefully, as banks, looking at the data, understanding what the model is doing, and that requires, I guess, back to technology and humans, is that it's designed to help. It's not always designed to replace entirely. As long as there is human oversight and scrutiny, then I feel more confident rather than saying, hey, let's get rid of the entire risk department and just trust it to the black box in the corner to go and make all of those decisions. Because that black box cannot go in front of a parliamentary committee. It cannot apologize to customers. Maybe it could actually, but it needs to have that degree of explainability. You can't just point to the box and say, the algorithm told me to do it, so I did.
Human oversight, I think that is sort of the key word. Wrapping it up, you have an audience of young professionals working for financial companies, hopeful, maybe a little bit worried about the future. Where is this AI thing going to take us? What is your big advice to the people listening?
Have curiosity. I'm sure that's why you have made the progress that you've made in your careers so far, and also not just what you've done, but what you're going to do. If you're not au fait, if you're not comfortable with AI, then let your curiosity take you down paths that means that you've got more insight and understanding. Recognize also that you are the ones that represent banking's future. And if you see things in banking that perhaps you feel uncomfortable about, then rather than having to then adapt and go, yeah, we're not comfortable about this, but this is just how banking is.
Thanks for your story, Alex. This wraps up this edition of FLAIRS, the podcast. We have a couple of more conversations like these lined up for you on the same platform where you found this one. Thank you for watching or listening, and enjoy FLAIRS 2023. Bye-bye.